Hi, and welcome to Ivy English. I'm Karen.
And I'm Chris Gorski.
Today is June 3rd, and we're on page 10 in your magazines. And today we have two short news items for you. And I have to say, it seems like Chris and I have a special interest in the first one, especially.
Yeah, holy smokes. Our title for our first article is AI Restored Beatles Song Wins Grammy Award. Not to take away from our second article, but I'm so excited to talk about this first article.
Yeah, and the Beatles have had such an influence, not just on American culture, but on world culture. Everybody knows the Beatles. Like my students, they're too young to know a lot of things, but they know the Beatles.
That's right. In fact, my colleague that sits next to me has a Beatles ringtone. A bunch of my students know a bunch of the most simple Beatles song. I'll often play them in my classroom before class. And this is a band that existed for fewer than 8 years. And nobody in that band was older than 30 when this band broke up. And think of the impact they still have today.
It makes me think back on when I was 8 years old, and I was totally gaga over the Beatles. 8 years old.
So when you were gaga over the Beatles, what was this called? You were a
Beatlemania.
A Beatlemania was when everybody, was it 1963 when they went to the U.S.? It was legendary. My mother was a Beatlemaniac too.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she was.
Okay, we'll talk more about it after we've read the article. Our title again is AI Restored Beatles Song Wins Grammy Award. The Beatles have secured their 8th Grammy Award with the song Now and Then, earning Best Rock Performance at the 2025 Grammy Awards. Released in 2023, this track marks the first Grammy win for a song completed with the assistance of artificial intelligence, AI.
The song was completed with the help of machine learning to isolate and clean up John Lennon's vocals from the original demo recording. These vocals were then combined with previously recorded guitar parts by George Harrison, along with new contributions from Paul McCartney and Ringo Starr. This brought all 4 members together for a new song, despite the loss of Lennon and Harrison decades ago.
Following the song's release, McCartney clarified that while AI was used, no synthetic elements were added, emphasizing its authenticity. And I would suggest you go to YouTube and just listen to the song and watch the video. The video is very impressive and kind of moving. I'll tell you more later if we have time about why.
I actually listened to it on Spotify. I'm a big fan of Spotify. And I think Karen is actually totally correct here because your comments that we were discussing before we began recording, I realized, I said, oh yeah, I thought a lot about the song. I thought a lot about the composition and the mix. And then I realized there was probably a very special video made for this particular song. And I didn't see it. I can't comment on it. And now what I want to do is just watch it.
What I can say is it will make you think about basic issues, namely life and death, because here you see a video with a montage. Montage means you bring a lot of pieces together from different things into one work. It's a montage of Paul McCartney and Ringo Starr today, recently, that they filmed. And then it is mixed with images from the past of the dead Beatles. So it really will hit you.
Oh, that sounds... I don't even want to discuss it too much because I imagine it's something that will make me get up in my feelings and almost get emotional thinking about it because that's a tough thing to think about because realistically, this is probably truly the final Beatles song.
That's right. And you see the 4 of them together in this form. It really makes you think about we're all going to the same place.
Yeah, no kidding.
Okay, so let's go back to the title. AI restored, that means something that has been restored through artificial intelligence. Beatles song, a song by the Beatles. It has won, but because it is because it is the title, and we do that for headlines, we use the present tense. So it won a Grammy Award. It's in the past, but in headlines and in titles, we often use the present tense. It wins a Grammy Award. And if you don't know what that is, Google it. You will find out. AI restored Beatles song wins Grammy Award. Okay, first paragraph. The Beatles have secured their 8th Grammy Award with the song Now and Then, earning Best Rock Performance at the 2025 Grammy Awards. So like a good lead, L-E-A-D, a lead is the first sentence in a news story that tries to give you as much information about the story ahead as it can. And this sentence does that. So we know they're talking about the Beatles, they're talking about the Grammys, they're talking about their new song, Now and Then, and the award that they got, and it's in this year's awards, 2025.
When we secure something, we can make safe, or we know they have gotten their 8th Grammy Award.
You can just say obtained.
Don't worry about how many the Beatles have had, because there are some other musicians that I think most people would say are probably not as impactful or really will not last as long as the Beatles. But that's because the Grammys is part of the music industry, and they're going to decide. They're going to decide we really want to push this artist or this particular song was very impactful today. If I'm being honest, Now and Then is a good song, but I wouldn't place it in the top 50s Beatles songs. And I most certainly would not say it was the best rock song of 2025. However, was it momentous to have a new Beatles song in this year? Yes.
Because
I'll
two
let you
of them
decide.
are dead.
Yeah, I'll let you decide whether the politics warrant that or not. But I still think it is a very interesting situation to use AI to help John Lennon bring one of his final songs to light.
Okay, let's continue. Released in 2023, this track marks the first Grammy win for a song completed with the assistance of artificial intelligence, AI. Now, I think a lot of us have mixed feelings about AI, and we probably will feel kind of funny about a song getting an award if we know it was composed by AI.
I think with context, we're going to see what they did is probably pretty justifiable.
Yes.
When we know the background of the song and when John Lennon wrote this and the way they used it, I think was a good use of AI. AI will draw up a lot of feelings for people, and they're not always contextualized in how was it used, how much was it used, and why. Personally, I use AI to kind of idea generate, and I think that's kind of fair. I think if you're using AI to kind of just do all the work for you, that's not going to produce good results for you. But I'll say that as we get context of this article, I'm going to say I'm on board with the way they use this.
Okay, and released means published, but usually if it is a song or a video or something like it, we will say released, and the year was 2023. And this track means one song in an album usually.
Another way to say you release a song is to drop a song, especially with very young, modern, hip artists. You drop something in 2023, and this just means exactly the same as release music or a video.
That is a recent usage. I think they've been using it in the last 10 or 15 years or so. I first heard it with podcasts. The new episode will drop next week.
It's probably closer to 20 because this is a phrase I was using in college.
Okay.
But the point is that language kind of develops and bubbles up to different layers. And definitely it was something that I remember, especially regarding the band Radiohead. Everyone was excited for the next Radiohead drop. And we're talking 20 years ago.
Okay, there you go.
No worries. All right, let's go to our next paragraph here. The song was completed with the help of machine learning to isolate and clean up John Lennon's vocals from the original demo recording.
Now, when you have this information, you can see why both Chris and I feel that the use of AI was fully justified, because John Lennon was just doing a demo. And when you do a demo, it's not for public release. It's just to try it out and see how it sounds when we record it. So that means you may have background noise, you may have mistakes. You may have all kinds of funny things that are wrong with it. So you can, if you use AI, you can get rid of a lot of the noise and you can fix some of the mistakes. And I think that's totally justified.
I agree. So when you use a demo recording, you're often using low quality tapes too. Even though John Lennon was quite wealthy, you just kind of slap it down, get it onto tape so you don't forget, and then you can come back to it later. Paul McCartney was famous for having recording equipment right next to his bed because he was one of those people that would wake up with a song with a piano and guitar and a notebook by his bed, dash out an idea, and go back to bed. He would wake up and forget, listen and say, oh yeah. In fact, that's how Let It Be came about. He woke up in the middle of the night with an idea, bashed out some chords, and came back to it later. He wasn't even sure it was his song. For context of this song, John Lennon wrote this demo in 1977. So think of the equipment from 1977 and what we have today. The sounds would contrast too much. And so AI was used to deaden the noise around it, bring out his vocals, and then they can add it to a modern mix. I think this is a completely justified and good use of AI. It's really a great use of it. If someone had a problem with the way AI was used here, I would almost feel they're just nitpicking because it's AI. Okay, let's continue. These vocals were then combined with previously recorded guitar parts by George Harrison, along with new contributions from Paul McCartney and Ringo Starr.
So George Harrison also passed away many years ago, so they also needed to save some of his parts, especially the guitar parts. And having done that, they could add on new parts sung by Paul McCartney and Ringo Starr, and with drums and things added because they're still here.
If for some reason you don't know who the Beatles are, John Lennon and Paul McCartney were the main singer-songwriters. Paul McCartney played the bass. George Harrison was the youngest of the band. He played guitar, and Ringo Starr was the drummer. They were all talented musicians in their own right. However, John Lennon and Paul McCartney were the main songwriters.
Yeah, George Harrison was known as the shy Beatle.
And which is true. He was a very kind of quiet, introverted person compared to more outgoing, older boys such as John Lennon and Paul McCartney. And if you're looking at Ringo Starr's name, 2 R's is correct. If you happen to not know the Beatles, that's the way he fashioned his name. I personally love the 2 R's. It's just such a silly thing. Okay, let's continue. This brought all 4 members together for a new song, despite the loss of Lennon and Harrison decades ago.
Which we already know. So it's just kind of summarizing everything that came before this sentence. The last paragraph, following the song's release, McCartney clarified that while AI was used, no synthetic elements were added, emphasizing its authenticity. So they're just repeating what we've already said. They only used AI to restore what was originally intended. They didn't add a lot of fancy stuff in addition.
Paul McCartney and Ringo Starr are still active musicians. They still tour, and I don't think they need too much AI to help them produce music. Like I said, they still have sold-out shows all the time throughout the world. I know we have another article, but Karen, I have to ask you, who is your favorite Beatle? What's your favorite Beatles song? And do you have a favorite post-Beatles song?
All right, in answer to the first question, it depends on what period in my life you're talking about. So if you go back to when I was 8 years old, when I first knew of the Beatles and watched them on Ed Sullivan and everything, my favorite Beatle, my gosh, I thought George Harrison was probably the cutest, actually. But as I've gotten to know the work of each individual Beatle over time, I guess Paul is my favorite. He's the most versatile.
Yeah, I think I gotta go with Paul too, although probably my favorite post-Beatles song is definitely from George Harrison, My Sweet Lord.
Oh.
And my favorite Beatles song, I'm gonna call it a tie between Blackbird, Paul McCartney, and Here Comes the Sun, which is, interestingly, over the years, millennials have really attached themselves to Here Come the Sun, and that is 100%, I 100% agree with that. I adore that song.
And you know that My Sweet Lord sounds like another earlier song, namely...
I don't remember, but I know exactly what you're talking about. And yes, it's very similar.
It's very similar. He definitely had that in his head, I think, when he wrote that song. There's so much else we could say, but we have to move on to the next article, which is entitled, DeepSeek Causes Global Concerns Over Data Security.
Okay, so DeepSeek is an AI chatbot, and it's a lot like ChatGPT, but because of its origins, people may not trust it as readily.
So we're going to get into some political areas here that are quite sensitive. Be ready for that. DeepSeek, a Chinese AI chatbot, has attracted global interest for its cost-effective development and advanced abilities. The DeepSeek R1 model incorporates a chain-of-thought process where the AI explains its reasoning step by step, allowing it to identify and correct mistakes. According to the Chinese company, DeepSeek R1 requires fewer computational resources compared to other AI models. This has led some to question whether the U.S. can maintain its lead in the AI field.
However, several countries have voiced concerns over data security, leading organizations in the public sectors of various nations to ban its use. Despite the issues raised, supporters argue that DeepSeek is a significant advancement in AI-driven communication. It remains to be seen if DeepSeek can establish itself as a lasting force in the industry.
Okay, let's go back to the beginning. Our title again is DeepSeek, which is the name of this AI program. Causes, that means it's making something happen. Global concerns, that means it's affecting not just one place, but the entire globe. That means all countries. Over data security, we want to know how safe the data is. So that's what the title means. DeepSeek causes global concerns over data security.
I'm just going to say right now, I generally, if there's an app on my phone, I generally don't trust it with my data. I'm very careful about which apps I put on my phone. And I also assume if I have this app on my phone, it is siphoning up my data.
Yeah, of
and
course.
It's probably being sold and used.
Yes.
I think that, I don't know, DeepSeek causes global concerns over data security. You can underline DeepSeek and put almost any app here.
That's
Facebook,
true.
Instagram, like they're going to use your data.
So when I first joined Facebook, I started reading concerns by other people about how they were not keeping private things private. I thought, you have posted over Facebook. Even if you marked it as private, you've already given it over to a very big company that reaches the entire world. Yeah. Did you not expect that when you signed up for Facebook?
I agree. I just feel like there's almost, especially with Meta, which is well known for doing this, you can underline DeepSeek, put an app in there, and just expect that to be compromised. And I don't know, maybe this DeepSeek app is going to have major issues, but I don't think it's much worse than anything else most apps are collecting on you and then selling. If you're putting it public on the internet, expect it to be seen, shared, and sold.
Apple has a reputation for being more careful about privacy, but you also should know that your phone, regardless of who the manufacturer is always listening to you. Always.
Absolutely.
They have everything. So be careful what you say if you've got a phone, if you've got like a TV, a smart TV, if you've got anything else like that, even email. So Wesley was telling me one time that a person who works in IT at the university was saying, yeah, I can see everything. He says, even all the deleted emails and everything. He said, yep, everything. Yeah. So even things you may think are secure like email, they are not.
At high-level government meetings, there are lockboxes outside of the room. And in normal government circumstances in the U.S., even high-level people are checked for their phone and microphones and kept out of those secure rooms. Those phones turned off and out of the room is the only way they're able to ensure that microphones are not turned on passively and collecting information.
There is a lesson we can learn from plumbers, and they will tell you that anything that can leak eventually will. And that's true about information. So let's go to our article. DeepSeek, a Chinese AI chatbot, has attracted global interest for its cost-effective development and advanced abilities. Now, it's this particular trait that shocked everybody, made them stop in their tracks, because we have been hearing all along about how many resources AI is using up because they use large language models, which require incredible amounts of computation. They use up a lot of electricity and water, just these very basic resources. So when we heard that there is a model of artificial intelligence that does not use so many resources, that is really shocking and a very big deal.
I think so. And as older models that may be more widespread than DeepSeek begin to progress and the code matures, they should, we hope, be able to parse that down and get it to a level where it's not as energy intensive and it becomes a little bit more efficient.
Well, they now face up to this challenge that they're going to have to meet.
Yeah, I think so. You're right that they're being faced with competition that now we need to step up our game. I agree with that.
The DeepSeek R1 model incorporates a chain of thought process where the AI explains its reasoning step by step, allowing it to identify and correct mistakes. And that is a hugely important thing because we know that so far AI is known for hallucinating. If it doesn't have the information you ask for on hand, it will make something up, and it often does not give its sources.
That's true. It does not give its sources because I do regularly use chatbots for idea generation. I think I even said that in the Beatles. I talked about it somewhere, but I'll use it for idea generation, or I'll ask it for here's an idea I have, expand upon it and just see where it can go. but it never does give sources. And that it's like, well, okay, well, how do I know this is true?
I have to mention another use for it that I just found out that really amazes me. 2 different people have told me they've used it for therapy. They describe their problem to ChatGPT, and it analyzes it point by point. It says, what am I leaving out? What are my blind points? One person said she generated 450 pages of conversation that she said was extremely helpful, and unlike a human therapist, was completely neutral and non-judgmental.
I think that's a very interesting way to use it as a mirror, as a reflection. Let me ask you a question about chatbots. Do you ever actually just, quote unquote, talk to your chatbot?
I know some people do, but I do not.
I don't either.
I do not.
So what ways do you use these?
In fact, I haven't been using it recently.
Okay.
A lot of my friends and collaborators are using it. I just haven't felt the need because the things I'm doing are apparently not yet part of the data used to create AI.
Interesting. So if I have a lesson plan, one way I've specifically used it, I have this idea and I'm like, I need an activity and I want it based around this, and give me 5 ideas, and it'll spit out ideas. And for me, it's almost just like brainstorming. It's a tool to assist my brainstorming. I've yet to ask it like a personal question, like, what do I want to ask this thing that I wouldn't want to talk to my wife about?
But see, you're probably a pretty balanced person emotionally, and that makes a difference.
Maybe it's my age too, right?
Yeah, age is another thing, not just for the second thing, the emotional consultation. For the first one, I think, that's same old stuff. I've been around so long, I've seen a lot of that stuff already.
Right. Yeah, maybe teenagers spend a lot of time with their kind of narcissistic kind of tendencies to want to talk about those things. Maybe.
But here, if it can tell you its reasoning, how it got to B from A and then to C, and if it can correct its mistakes, finding the mistakes is a big deal because a lot of us, we all have blind spots. We can't find our own mistakes. So if it is programmed to do that and then correct them, that is a huge step forward. Let's go on to the next sentence. According to the Chinese company, DeepSeek R1 requires fewer computational resources compared to other AI models.
So when we talk about computational resources, this is really just fewer zeros and ones. But as Karen mentioned, this is very energy intensive, and that creates a lot of heat, that creates a lot of energy, and that creates a lot of pollution. And that's problematic as the world kind of is dealing with climate change.
This has led some to question whether the U.S. can maintain its lead in the AI field. Well, I can almost guarantee that they are working their bottoms off now, trying to catch up and do better. That's what happens with competition.
That's true. Here we go. Our next paragraph. However, several countries have voiced concerns over data security, leading organizations in the public sectors of various nations to ban its use. Public sectors just means the governments of various countries. And when we ban something, we make it illegal or we forbid it from being done.
Now, I can understand where this is coming from because of the world geopolitical situation, and you figure out the rest yourself. So just keep in mind, like Chris said, there are security concerns about every single thing now involving computers.
I worked in a secure organization for passports for the government, and I will tell you, they don't let you bring in any type of technology. You are going back to the Stone Age. I'm talking about cassette tapes to listen to music while you do data entry. So governments are very concerned about this.
Sorry, but I was going to say not just governments. I also have experience working with test question recording, and they do the same thing. They make sure that you've got everything electronic off your person and stored in a locker before you go to record or do any related work, because these questions cannot be leaked to the outside. That could lead to cheating.
Despite the issues raised, supporters argue that DeepSeek is a significant advancement in AI-driven communication.
I don't think there's any doubt about that. That is not something you can argue about. It truly is.
Onwards and upwards. It remains to be seen if DeepSeek can establish itself as a lasting force in the industry.
That remains to be seen. Stay tuned. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.